Hi.
Hi, Megan.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I think it maybe started us just a few seconds early, but I think we're good now. My clock says 3 o'clock, so I guess we could probably get started.
Mine sees three too.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much for coming on to talk to me today.
Yeah, I'm super excited we both connected because I think we both could relate to certain topics, especially when it comes to the insurance world.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Yeah. So I think we finally first connected doing one of my coffee chats, and we very quickly realized we both have some pretty strong opinions about construction insurance.
We sure do.
Yeah. So I solicited some questions from various followers, and I've preloaded them into the banners. First, I'll throw that one up for you. So we can go through those questions. I also I don't know if you saw this, but I enticed people to give us questions that they wanted us to talk about by promising a free $15 gift card for somebody who
Okay.
submitted a question, and another free $15 gift card for anybody who wants to come up on stage with us today. So we'll see if anybody is brave enough to do that. Lance is here. Hey, Lance. And so we have to do those things. We have to answer our questions. But if it's okay with you, I wanted to start with a little bit of a hot topic from a post that I saw last week on construction insurance that kind of lit me up. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on it too. Is that all right with you if we start there?
Yes, let's hear it. Let's wake some people up. It's 3 p.m.
I know, right? This is your afternoon wake up call, people.
It
Okay,
sure
so
is.
all right, so this is my truncated version of the post. I don't want to actually throw up the post or mention any names, but the general gist of the post revolved around the idea about whether or not OSIP enrollees have a right to a copy of the policy. Now, before we jump into that, though, I don't know who all our audience is, so maybe it might be helpful if we just give a quick explanation of some of these terms. So, do you want to explain what an OSIP is, or do you want me to do it just quickly?
I'll let you do it since you're the attorney and you definitely know what words to use.
Okay, fair enough. So OSIP stands for Owner Controlled Insurance Policy. You may also see CSIP, which stands for Contractor Controlled Insurance Policy. Anybody who enters into subcontracts is probably pretty familiar with these at this point. You and I, Rocio, are both in California, so we both know how common they are here. Almost all tract housing developments are using them at this point.
Mhm.
And the subcontractors don't really have an option. That is their one and only option for general liability insurance coverage for the particular project. They are required to pay a premium, although the way they pay the premium, and Rocio, check me if I'm wrong on this one. Um, the way they pay their premium is it's actually deducted from the contract price. But they do actually pay the premium. They do have either a deductible or an SIR under the OSIP.
Mhm.
Again, asterisk, if you don't know what an SIR is, SIR stands for self-insured retention. That just means instead of paying the OSIP or the GL upfront as soon as the claim is made, instead you have to pay that amount of money out of pocket before the insurance coverage is triggered. And so with that background, we come back to the topic of the post, which is the OSIP enrollees. So that would be mostly subcontractors in most cases. Whether they have a right to a copy of the policy, I'm assuming they wanted that policy so that they can know how to make a claim. Usually, most subcontractors, in my experience, aren't just trying to collect policies if they don't need them for some particular reason, right? And so the poster was sort of offering the concept for open for discussion about whether or not enrollees have a right to a copy of the policy. Some other LinkedIn user commented and used some pretty strong language referring to subcontractors and OSIP enrollees as just some yokel who wants a copy of the policy, implying that they don't necessarily have they're not actually an insured under the policy. They don't necessarily have a right to the policy. And it elicited a pretty strong response from me. But I'm curious, Rocio, what your thoughts are on that before I go balls to the wall, because I was real pissed off.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I I'm totally with you in that sense because I don't think there's no reason to be using terms like that. It's LinkedIn. The person that's commenting and making a remark about OSUP knows OSUPs. They're dealing with people that deal with OSUPs. People reading it are more than likely in the construction world. So that's my first comment towards that first word. But the second, it's a question that, from my understanding and from my experience, is that my subs have been provided with a copy of the OSUP. There's I've
Really?
never had someone not get a copy of their OSUP because they need to know their deductible. They need to know what payroll they need to report. Everyone's different. So on that, and then it also tells you who's the main carrier. Is it gonna be who's participating in it? And it has a lot of information, and all my contractors who have participated in OSUPs get it because they have to provide a copy of their certificate to the builder.
Yeah. I'm
Oh no, I think we lost you, Megan. She might have gotten herself out because she was that pissed off. But hopefully she could get back on here soon. But yeah, to go on to your comment, Megan, it is true that people are provided with a copy of their OSUP. I was just talking on here just to
I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. Tech
keep
problems.
going.
So yeah, I was about to say though, I'm really glad to hear you say that because unfortunately, it has not been my experience that a lot of my subcontractor clients anyway, they're not often given a copy of the OSIP, despite the fact that they are clearly unquestionably enrollees in the OSIP. They're entitled to the policy. And usually their contract says, I agree and acknowledge that I received a copy of the OSIP, right? But we actually have a remarkable inability to get copies of the OSIPs pretty regularly. So maybe offline, you can give me some hot tips on how I can get those OSIPs for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons why that particular comment, well, there were many reasons, but one of the big reasons why it lit me up so much, I think my response was maybe not LinkedIn appropriate either, but I said something along the lines of, and this right here is why I like to sue insurance carriers, because you will find any excuse not to provide benefits under the policy every time. And to the poster's credit, or the commenter's credit, he did sort of backtrack a little bit when I pointed it out that way. And he did acknowledge at that point finally that an OSIP enrollee is in fact an insured under the policy. They are not some yokel intended or unintended third-party beneficiary of the policy. They are in fact an insured under the policy itself. There was a little bit of debate about whether or not they're considered a first-party insured or a named insured, additional insured. Do you have any thoughts on that? I wasn't sure on that one. I was like, maybe that's a little bit more nuanced than I care about, because really at the end of the day, they're either entitled to coverage or they're not. But do you have any thoughts on that part of it?
It just depends how the contract's written.
Yeah.
I would think because they are being held responsible, they would be a name insured, but it could also, most of the time, OSEPs will ask the subcontractor's insurance to step in first, then them.
Yeah.
So it's all, every agreement is different, but it is true that, when there is a claim, everyone is responsible for it. And that's why OSEPs get sticky, because there is a certain amount of responsibility that each contractor has, because everybody's basically pulled into this agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I love this conversation because it's so interesting. Our experiences have been a little bit different because most of my clients, their insurance policies, their typical GL policies, have an OSIP exclusion. And so if there's an OSIP at play, then the GL is like, sorry, not my problem. So the OSIP really is the sort of first line of defense a lot of times in these cases. And so when they're playing these games about not giving us policy documents, not giving us tender instructions, not giving us claims professional contact information, it's really frustrating because it really truly leaves the subcontractors holding the bag a lot of times.
Yeah, but you'll definitely see the OSUP on the residential exclusion. So I've never seen a policy take on residential, because residential is always excluded. But on the commercial side, there are little wordings in there that it makes it very complex too, because they will leave out, such things as tract homes. Tract homes are not covered. But they do throw you off with those like if, when, and so.
Yeah. The overly lawyered languages. Yeah, for
Yes.
sure. Okay, well, I'm glad I finally got to talk it out. I'm feeling lighter after having been validated about my opinion on that controversial post. Okay, so let's turn to some of the comments that we got from some of the followers. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Okay, what specific risks and liabilities are associated with the construction project? Any thoughts on that, or you want me to take that first?
I would definitely say the risk and liability associated with construction project is time delays. That's number one thing I would definitely say, because there's either a delay due to shortage of labor or shortage of material. So
Yeah.
specific risk, it's time. You face these poor contractors. They're facing at some instances they're liquidated damages. I think that's the number one fear on everybody. There might be a stop notice lien. So I would definitely say time is the biggest risk.
I agree with that. I think time is a huge risk. It's almost because I think in terms of risk, it's hard for me to sort of almost like hierarchy them. I definitely agree. Time is a huge risk. I think um, the job site itself is a huge risk, and I don't mean that in the way that people probably assume I mean that. I'm not necessarily talking about job site safety. I'm talking more about the conversations that sort of happen in real time on the job between either the field guys or the foreman or even sometimes the PMs. And there are these conversations that take place in real time dealing with problems that are fundamentally changing the terms of the contract. And conversations are had, agreements are made, decisions are entered into, and a lot of times that never ends up documented anywhere. And if that becomes a part of a dispute down the line, now we're relying on hopefully all the same people still work for all the same companies. B, hopefully they have a memory and a recollection of these various conversations. Or C, hopefully maybe they followed it up with a text and they kept the text and they still have the phone. It's like it's all of these things, right? But like I think a huge potential risk is not having a specific policy in place that all your employees know about on how to handle and document all of those sort of like real time split second decisions that have to be made. It's just, it's a reality of every single job site, but it oftentimes doesn't necessarily get reflected in the documentation for the project because everybody's thinking about the next day. They're not thinking about 3 years from now when this gets when it gets turned into a lawsuit. Right.
Yeah, and that's why I chuckled, because just today I was like, "Yep, change orders." So I was dealing with that exact situation this afternoon at 1 p.m. And same thing. There's a claim that happened last year in January. Now, with resolution and going through the insurance policy. Now we're here, and now we're like, okay, where's that email that you had confirmed this? And it's a lot of totally agree with you on that sense. I mean, change orders are a pain in the butt. And just like you said, there's a lot of even conversations with with the project manager and the subs. They're saying something else, and then maybe that doesn't get communicated over to the office. And then now you have an angry subcontractor saying, hey, well, my guys were told this, and why are we not on the schedule, or what's going on? Now you're changing up the story, and they're like, wait, what are you talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And um as you were talking about that, another thing sort of popped into my head too that plays off of some of the issues that you said, which my husband, who those of you who don't know, my husband is an HVAC superintendent, and he mentioned, oh, not again.
He mentioned that maybe it's the schedule. Well, I'm just going to keep talking about um, change orders and so forth. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree that that is definitely the risk. I wouldn't say, oh, there you are.
It's to do with tech problems. I'm so sorry.
No, you're
My
good.
goodness.
So, what was your husband saying?
So my husband was pointing out that one big thing that he has trouble figuring out how to manage is when you enter into a contract for a job that may not start for 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, and there's a lack of communication, and then all of a sudden you get the email that's saying like, hey, we're ready for you, we need you on site tomorrow or next week, and it's like, whoa, what job is this? I haven't thought about this since I signed the contract 18 months ago. So you're right. Time, to circle back to what you were saying, time is a huge factor, and I think a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and
Um,
it could get sticky, especially if you have like a private contract or if it's public works.
yes. Oh man. Yeah. Public works is a whole other problem for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to quickly address a question that Lance popped into the comments, but when I got kicked off, it got kicked off, but I remember what it said. So Lance asked if there's any sort of shortcut way for somebody to learn these terms, and I'm assuming he meant insurance terms if they don't already know them. So I have some thoughts on that, but what do you think, Rocio?
Um, I think it would depend on what type of insurance terms. So if he's like referring to like OSUP, or if he's just I'm assuming maybe like the exclusions, coverages, because even that I could probably go down the list of my clients and they still don't know what certain things mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there are a couple of sort of handy cheats for the more common ones. One, I think, plug for Rocio, your broker. You can always ask your broker if to explain the terms if you don't understand them. A more expensive option is your attorney. You can always ask your attorney to explain those terms if you don't understand them. I think a lot of us were involved in a conversation on LinkedIn, who knows how long ago now, but about the application of AI to construction or to construction contract terminology. And I think I commented and others commented that AI can be really helpful in terms of explaining concepts or clarifying to make sure that you understand the concepts. And so if you hear an acronym like OSIP or SIR that you don't understand, you could try ChatGPT if you give it context. I would certainly say, what does OSIP mean in the context of construction insurance? I think, and I see Josh Luker is here with us, so maybe he'll pop up in the comments and I can show it. But I think Josh's course for project managers probably talks about some of this terminology, at least at a surface level. So you might be able to get some education from something like that in a course like Josh's. Certainly, my course that is coming April 1st, hopefully, fingers crossed, that is certainly going to talk about definitions and explanations of some of these types of concepts from a proactive risk management standpoint. So, and Google, always Google. You can always Google it. And again, if you give it context, I think you'll get pretty close to a workable definition that most people are going to need just from the perspective of actually being a construction company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we've got some comments in the chat, so I'm going to go off script here. Let's see. Heath wants to know. Oh no, he comments. That's why a sub, you never do work until the yes, Heath, you never do work
Yes,
until the
absolutely.
Keith, you're my hero, but I have to say, although I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I'm hoping that because you put that in the comment, that means that that's what you do. Unfortunately, that is my experience is that is rarely the case, that subs wait to perform the work until they have a signed change order. What about you, Rocio?
It's definitely a common mistake when business owners are newer. Definitely, I have seen that mistake when my clients have gone from transition from the private to the public. Because, like I said, those two worlds are completely different, and sometimes I have also have had situations where the employees were told by the project manager, "Oh, you need to do this," so they start the work, and then when they talk to the owner, the owner's pissed off, saying, "Wait, what do you mean? Like I haven't approved anything." "Oh, well, he said that the demo guy is gonna come in or the electrician, so I have to move this," and the guy's like, "Wait, we're doing free work. Nothing's been approved. I haven't gotten an email," and
Yes.
then that seems to have a rotation, but I see that a lot.
Yes, absolutely. And then you have the other, going back to the problem of time. A lot of times this change order work is done urgently, right? And
Hmm.
it gets squeezed in between other things. And so the sub that is responsible for putting together the change order and the backup documentation, now time keeps passing before their PM has a chance to get to it. And now by the time they've submitted the change order, it's been a while. And so not
Hmm.
only has the sub been holding the bag on financing that portion of the work, but now you've got the GC pushing back saying, I don't remember approving this. I don't remember that. And they're pushing back on the individual backup documentation and the actual amounts that you're asking for. It's just a shit show. It's just a shit show. So like Josh Luker's hot take here, fuck change orders. Josh has an aversion to swearing. I don't know if any of you saw his post about that a few weeks ago. He thinks that swearing in construction is a sign of a weak mind, I think is how he put it. I took issue with that. So that's why he says fuck change orders, but he says F it. I say it the right way. Okay, and then also from Josh, just to answer my question, apparently his course does not talk about definitions and terminology, so
Okay.
scratch that recommendation. And he gives us a question. Josh is great today. Thanks, Josh, for all of your hard work. Are contracts from 18 months prior even valid? I just think of COVID, how everything just shut down and your backlog went to zero. So I wanted to throw this up because it's not just a throwaway comment. I don't know, Rocio, if you have any different thoughts on this, but for me, yeah, usually they are, unless there's a specific term in the contract that I don't know, terminates it. But a lot of times these contracts, especially with like, I'm thinking of master agreements for tract housing, you enter into those master agreements and they're good for years and years and years, right? You just get the project specific work orders. But even for, a commercial project where it's a specific one-off contract, yeah, I mean, it still can be. I think this is when you start worrying about things like escalation clauses, which goes a little bit beyond the insurance concern and gets more into contract provision concerns. But an escalation clause would be your better risk management tool for a contract that you've entered into way, 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 way before the work is ever actually going to get started. The best way to protect yourself there is to make sure that you have an escalation clause that allows you to up your prices based on, time passing. So that's kind of my thought on that one. Rosie, do you have anything else on that one?
Yeah. So it doesn't matter because at least from my insurance and to see how valid a claim is and how it will be accepted, it's based on the scope of work when you went into a contract with when you went to agreement with that specific contract when the policy started. Now, if that policy has an exclusion for prior works, meaning that you change carrier, now that's where it gets messy. And that's obviously now that's insurance.
Right.
But and besides, if let's say if you had kept, the same carrier, I'm throwing out a name, GL Berkeley. You've been with Berkeley for the past 3 years and your contract's 2 months, 2 years old. Yes, it's accepted. It doesn't matter. It's when you started a job, when the claim occurred. And of course, this also goes back into different types of policies, occurrence and claims made. There's no reason why a contractor would be on a claims made policy. That's absolutely insurance 101. Like no one
So
should be
can
on
you
that.
pause right there and explain the difference between occurrence and
Yeah.
claims made in case people like Lance don't
Mhm.
know? Sorry, Lance, if you do know.
Yeah. Okay, so it's exactly how the word is spelled out. So occurrence is when the claim occurred, and claims made is when the claim was made, but it's only for that period of time. So let's say you had if your policy is based on the occurrence form, and it's been like that ever since 2020, and you have a claim that arises in 2023 but from 2020, it's going to be based on that GL claim that's occurrence. Now if it's claims made, it's only claims made policies are only effective for that policy that it took place. So that means that if you have a claims made policy right now from 2024 to 2025, you could only process that claim for that period of time. If you want to extend coverage, now you have to get this thing called a TEL. So, an insurance, a TEL means is basically a replacement to extend coverage for that specific claims made policy. Now, I say this because every contractor should be on occurrence. And this goes for a majority of people, because occurrence means that if you had a claim that's 3 years old and you've been on an occurrence form, that claim will go back into that specific policy versus a claims made. So if a claims made, you're restricted only to that specific policy. I know it's a little back and forth, but if you just think about it, like, when was that claim made? It has to be made during that specific time period. Occurrence, it could happen whenever it occurred, and it will go back to that date.
Thank you. And I am so sorry that you're like hosting this whole thing. I keep getting kicked off.
No,
I don't know
you're
what is
good.
going on. So thank you. I appreciate you very much. Okay, another question from somebody else. Are there any new and unique insurance options out there that people haven't considered, like project loss insurance? And I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about this because I've never heard of project loss insurance. This was a new one for me.
Yeah, I want to know what project loss insurance. Maybe they're me confusing it with maybe business income or professional liability, but I have not heard of a project loss. Maybe it could be
Oh, okay.
related to builder's risk insurance,
Oh
but I would
yeah.
have to
And
get
then
more.
they put in parentheses PLI, which made me think of employment practices liability insurance because we call it EPLI. But they said project loss insurance and then they put PLI. And I'm not familiar with that. So neither are you. So I guess we don't have an answer to that one.
No, maybe they're talking about like professional liability.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. So
I-
like
In
for
that
like
sense,
design
I
professionals.
do. Yeah, there's professional liability, which would basically cover like construction defect, some construction defect, breach of contract. So basically, professional liability covers anything that GL does not cover. So GL is damage to others. That includes your property, marketing, but it does not include your work. It includes your subs work, but it has a very um defined of what it's not covered. And let's say if you have, a business income, which I think, which maybe that's what they're talking about, project loss insurance, that will fall under your professional liability. So if the project is being delayed, and I have to be careful with that, because there's some things that it won't cover, but professional liability will basically give you an extension form of things that your general liability will not cover you for.
So how often do you actually see professional liability policies? Because I never see them for my subs. I only ever see them for design professionals.
Oh, I recommend them because I've had
Oh
some
yeah, for
really
sure.
shitty I've had some really shitty situations where I've learned from. Okay, so I've I have a long history with dealing with $1 million claims. And that I do. And the reason I always recommend it, and I see it because, a pollution claim. So, general liability doesn't cover pollution.
Mhm.
You should probably have a own pollution if you're a plumber doing other things, but there's some other things that could get you into
Waterproofing.
pollution. Hazard material, even in with your when you're driving and delivering certain things. But it does come to also as breach of contract, because breach of contract is also a common it's a common lawsuit within the construction world. And it could be either because maybe the person walked away, or the sub wasn't getting paid on time. So oftentimes when um newer businesses, they don't really know on how to lean a project or how to go about a payment issue. They just don't answer back. Or they just sometimes have situations they walk away, and then next thing you know, they learn the hard way that that's breach of contract.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, yes, let's recommend it to everybody. I'm with you. The pushback I usually get, I also feel that way about employment practices liability insurance, especially for our California clients, Rocio, because our employment practice, our labor code for employers out here can be incredibly tricky and expensive if you get it wrong. So I
Yeah.
oftentimes am pushing EPLI coverage on my clients, but it's pretty cost prohibitive. Do you see a little bit of pushback on that for
No,
professional
so the
liability?
lucky thing about professional liability, it is not expensive. It's at most it's going to cost you $5,000, but majority of the
Mm,
time the quotes, for a $10 million company, it's like 3,000, 4,000. It also depends on the type of work you're doing. So if you're doing more residential, it's going to be a little more higher. But commercial, I have a 20 million contractor, and he's paying like I think like less than $5,000 for professional liability. And it covers
wow.
like more than a million. It's an extra million on top of his GL. So it just protects us. And we have a $5 million umbrella. We have all and the
Yeah.
pollution. We have everything because like I said, we've been in some bad situations where someone subrogated against us, or there was some type of a way that the adjuster advised us, like, okay, well, if you had professional liability, you could have gone this route instead of doing this. Now your GL doesn't have to suffer this much. So yeah,
Yeah.
so luckily professional liability is cheap, unlike EPL, because I have my own differences and opinions about EPL.
Okay. What do you want to share?
I do.
Go, hit
So
me. Tell me why I'm wrong to
all
recommend it.
right. No, you're not wrong. You're absolutely right. Okay, so we all know California is an employee friendly state, meaning it's an uphill battle. You're going to lose. If you ever get sued by a labor attorney, applicant attorney, they're basically going to strip you naked. They're going to strip you naked in the sense that they're going to go through your documents and they're going to see where you're out of compliance. Out of compliance means that so and so records are not updated and not up to par. They're not up to date with the 2024 rules, which a lot of people are still not up to date with their employee handbooks, with the new workplace violence plan that's going on, with the new uh, hours, hourly wages, the breaks, time cards. I mean, I have a whole tangent about that. But anyways,
Right.
so EPL is expensive in that reason. And it is expensive, and we're talking about starting off maybe $10,000 starting off, and it could go up from 10,000 to maybe 70,000, 100K, depending on your deductible. But it has a limit, or it doesn't cover you for wage and hour, and that's the thing that people get sued for. So
I
no
didn't
one's
even know that.
yeah. So there's certain policies that will
Wow.
not include wage and hour. There's some that do
That's
include
wild.
it, but a lot, like let's say restaurants, find me, please show me a new policy that covers restaurants on wage and hour. I have not seen that since COVID. I used to manage workers' comp claims, and after COVID happened, I was not able to find an EPL policy for my restaurants. It was
Yeah.
near impossible for restaurants and healthcare to find wage and
Wow.
hour. And where the labor law attorneys are going to win is wage and hour. You're not going to win $100,000 or more on someone smacking someone's butt. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of the problem with wage and hour, at least in California, is the penalties. So it's not just the violation itself. Just one instance of the violation triggers the statutory penalties, and they just roll. And it's like Dave Ramsey on crack. It's like just the snowball effect. And so many times the penalties end up far exceeding the actual damages for the violation itself. And I've seen a lot of companies just go
Yeah,
out.
I mean, you're gonna get violations on the brakes, on the mileage reimbursement. That's huge in construction, as well as salespeople. So if you're an employer and you're not reimbursing your employees on mileage, and you have to be very careful with that too, because you can have an employee drive from, especially in construction, drive from to different job sites without reimbursing them on their gas. So gas reimbursement is huge, and they will definitely put you on that, as well as cell phone usage. So if a project manager is using his personal phone to make calls, they will be able to go back and get you for phone usage. So I'm talking about what attorneys going after people using their personal phone
Oh yeah.
and gas and mileage.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's see. Let's get over here. Okay, what's the most overrated insurance that companies should be getting rid of? I like that question because it kind of flips it on its ear, right? Like normally we're being asked, what do we recommend that people
Mm-hmm.
do and buy? So this is a good one. What should they be getting rid of?
Ooh,
I
okay.
know.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna take on this. Okay. So I think excess limits need to be lowered. I really don't know
Oh,
why a subcontractor, especially a smaller one, needs to carry a $5 million excess limit. I
mhm.
understand, there's big projects. Yes, I've seen horrific things happen. But some of those limits, in order to bid or to participate, I mean, let the little guy have go off of 2 million. If he's just going to be in there doing some floors, some installments. Now, if it's the crane operator, okay, yes, to keep the 5 million, you need that. We know we're
Right.
carrying heavy objects in the air, but if it's someone, doing epoxy, something minor, I don't think they need a $3 million excess.
Yeah, I mean, like the millwork guy probably doesn't need to be having that much insurance. Like they probably don't even need
No,
an umbrella policy, really, at
no.
that point. You're right. I think it's hard to say getting rid of because so many, as you know, Rocio, like a lot of their contracts have their meaning construction companies, those contracts have insurance requirements that they have to carry. And I have opinions about some of those insurances, and I'm like, I don't know, man. You have to because it's a contractual requirement. You're not going to get the job if you don't. But like,
Hmm.
are you ever going to actually make a claim on that policy? No. But I like your answer. That's a really good that's a really interesting take on the excess on lowering the excess limits. I like that idea. Okay, let's see. What are the biggest pitfalls that you see companies making that get their insurance claims denied? I definitely have thoughts on this. What do you think?
Not submitting a claim on time. I would say that.
Okay.
Waiting too long to submit a claim, because every company is different, but the rule of thumb is usually max 90 days. That applies to workers' comp claims too. If you have an injury happens, you have to report it. It's typically 30 days, but they'll give you the 90-day extension. After you do that, they start to question, and they'll say, why are you submitting it now if this happened? And another thing too, a property, because unfortunately, we're seeing the mess that LA's in. There's been a lot of theft. There's been a lot of robbery. So now insurance companies are getting really strict because they're getting hit with these, big losses. So if there's a theft claim and it gets reported late, it makes them question, like, okay, well, if we had this much stolen, why is it being reported late? Now I am seeing now a pushback on the property.
Really interesting.
Mhm.
They're pushing back on actually paying out on the claim.
Yeah, they want to know more. They want to get
Okay.
pictures. They want to see more evidence. They want a lot more information than they would as opposed to 3 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So my take on this is a slightly different. It kind of incorporates a little bit more of the legal aspect of it. I think for me, a pitfall is potentially not pushing back on a reservation of rights. And again, for those of you who don't know what that is, when you submit your claim to the insurance company, they'll first send you an acknowledgement of receipt of the tender, basically saying, like, okay, we got your claim. We're doing our
Mhm.
initial investigation. This is your assigned claims adjuster. We'll be in touch once we make a coverage determination. More so in the last few years than ever before, insurance carriers are automatically going to a reservation of rights as opposed to a full investigation and determination. And a reservation of rights basically says, all right, we don't know yet. We're not willing to commit that there's actually coverage for this claim under your policy, but we're still going to go ahead and appoint counsel to defend it. And we're going to continue investigating, but we're not really going to agree that there's coverage under the policy. And then a lot of times they'll just never change that position. So they will continue on through the entire claims process and litigation under a reservation of rights. And there are a lot of reasons why that has the potential to be majorly problematic for construction companies.
Oh my
Not
god,
the
you just
least.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Go
Yes.
ahead.
I mean, you're on the ball, Megan. I cannot tell you how many times that we've gotten, oh, here's your adjuster, here's this, and in 60, 90 days. By the way, thank you so much for your information. We have concluded that your claim is denied. What? Wait, what do you mean? Like, didn't we just like go through the contract and you put out this piece? Oh, yeah, we did. Going through underwriting process, we just know. And something, you know what? I have seen, and I've seen this across many carriers. I'm not going to name any names not to get us in trouble, but I've seen some underwriters where it is clear the insurance clearly says that there's coverage and they still deny it, and then they'll go back and then they'll change it, or they say, "Oops, I'm so sorry, I misread this. Uh, I'm so sorry, man. Like 120 days, we did say it was accepted, but we actually confirmed it was denied. A big mistake on our assistant, and we don't know how it got through this." Well, what do you mean? Now we have
Right.
to, yeah, you have to go get counsel now because we're denying it.
Yeah,
I've
not
seen that.
only are you now stuck in a lawsuit
Mhm,
without insurance, or without insurance and without an attorney,
mhm,
but also, fortunately, I don't see them actually follow through on this very often. But in California, there's case law that says the carrier can actually come back after the insured, their contractor, to be reimbursed for the amounts that they paid the attorney while the attorney was defending the claim under the reservation of rights. So not only is it now you're in a lawsuit with no insurance, now you're in a lawsuit with no attorney. Oh, and by the way, you owe us money too. And it's wild to me. And that's why I kind of lumped this in under this question of like, you need to be pushing back on those reservation of rights letters as soon as they come. You need to be saying, and by you, I mean you directly in collaboration with your broker, or
mhm.
if you do have your own attorney, because your insurance appointed attorney can't have these conversations, by the way. They are conflicted out of getting into a conflict with your insurance carrier. So your broker is your best friend and your personal attorney is your best friend. But you need to be pushing back and saying, okay, I read your reservation of rights letter. I see the bases that you've given me for potentially denying the claim or for questioning whether there's coverage under the claim. Here's my response to that. Like, here's my affirmative argument back to you about why you're wrong. And here's additional documentation or evidence to support why there's coverage under this policy. Because they're not giving reservation of rights letters because there's a legitimate question about coverage. They're giving reservation of rights letters as a first response because nobody ever pushes back. And it's bullshit. And this is another reason why I like suing insurance companies.
No, I'm totally with you. And I think they do that, with strategy. They just don't assign letters because they know, and the longer they could prolong without
Yep.
paying your claim,
Yep.
the more money they have in reserves. It's a whole. I mean, I could get into that whole claims are adjusted and how uh different carriers have a different way of reserving claims. But to Megan's point, I have seen that where people receive these letters and it oftentimes that these insurance companies use these technical words, long things to understand, only an attorney can understand. And it really does put pressure and puts a poor employer under this big misconception. Like, what do I do? Okay, I think my claim is covered or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, Amanda, yes, it is slimy. I'll say it. It's slimy. It's not just slimy. In my opinion, it's almost always bad faith, which is, again, why I like suing insurance companies, because that's what they do. Like, it's slimy. It's slimy. You're paying them a premium in exchange for coverage that you expect to have when the claim is covered. I don't have a problem with insurance carriers denying claims that should not be covered under the policy. That's business, right? I don't have a problem with that. I'm not so anti-insurance that I'm like expect them to cover claims that aren't actually covered under the policy. What pisses me off is when they're denying claims that are clearly covered under the policy. That is slimy, and yes, Amanda, also unethical.
Yeah,
And arguably illegal, in my opinion. In my opinion.
yeah.
um,
It definitely puts like if you have one scope of work, this contractor only does one trade. He doesn't sub anything out. 100% of this is all commercial. There's no weird thing, and they still will send those letters out to that guy who's actually doing everything by the books.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen that.
It's gross. It's gross. So Amanda had another question that again I can't pop up because my internet sucks and I keep getting kicked out. So the comment is gone, but I remember what the question was. She wanted to ask us, I think it was a follow-up when we were having our conversation about the timeliness of submitting the claim itself in terms of
Yes.
the bases for denials. She wants to know what impact, and I may be paraphrasing a little bit, Amanda, so if you want to throw it up again, I maybe can catch it. But I think what she was saying was she wants to know the impact of sort of informal communications between the parties to try to resolve the dispute amongst themselves, and the impact that delay could have on delaying making the claim itself. And I think you and I are going to have different answers on this, Rocio. So I'm curious for your thoughts.
Okay, so is that like, I think the question that, so I can understanding it correct, you mean like the contractor trying to resolve it with the GC, and maybe that's, they're just trying to see what could be paid, and if does it have to be submitted, because
Yeah,
I could see that happening when claims are, they're less than 50K. I mean, do I really want to pay a deductible if my deductible is 5,000, 10,000? It just depends. Is it
right.
something that we could work it out, or can we do this? Can I hide it under the rug and then hope nothing happens, and then next thing you know, it turns out to be a bigger problem? Yeah, I think that that conversations with the parties involved definitely has a delay in it. I always say, because insurance companies, of course, they're not the quickest. You know that. It takes 24 to 72 hours for them to even confirm they received your claim. It just depends. Another week for an adjuster to be assigned, and then that adjuster has approximately 60 days to collect everything they need to collect. Again, these adjusters are overwhelmed, and they do have several claims, across the nation. They're getting claims, that old claims, all types of claims, and it's saturated. So it is a slow process, and that's why people hate claims, because everybody knows that if they submit a claim to the insurance company, it's going to take a while. Same thing like when you get a repair in your car, you get hit, you get a dent, you have to go through the process, the authorization, the billing. I mean, it's a whole process on it. But I do think I am with her in the sense that um, communication with the parties involved can delay the claim.
Yeah. So my take on this, it might give you heart palpitations, Rocio, so you might want to like cover your ears. But my take on this is I am in favor of oftentimes making strategic tenders and strategically timed tenders. Because a lot of times I'll receive a claim that, especially like, I'm sure you remember this time period, Rocio, we went through a period of about 4 years in the mid 2000s where we had exorbitantly high SIRs, and that was it. There were no deductibles, and it was like $75,000 SIRs. Mm-hmm. And so for claims that were made that were triggered under those policy periods, oftentimes I have made determinations that it might be wiser to delay, hold off on making the claim for loss run reasons and all the other reasons until we figure out whether or not we're actually going to be looking to the carrier to provide coverage, to provide settlement money. And so I have intentionally delayed making claims on more than one occasion. I do it for, like I said, strategic reasons. And I know it's a risk in doing that because I don't disagree with you. There are specific timelines that you're required to follow under the terms of the insurance policy itself. So there are risks in doing that. But like everything with risk management, you have to have your risk tolerance assessment, right? And then you know what your risk tolerance is. As long as you know what risk you're taking, you can assume that risk knowingly and intentionally. And so sometimes I do that. And that sounds like I'm not answering Amanda's question, but that's all part of it. So a lot of times we will be very early in a claims process, particularly if there's like a homeowner, a GC, and a sub, and it's the three parties. The homeowner has made the claim about the work, but the GC and the sub kind of agree that the homeowner might be a little bit pissy or nitpicky, and it's not really something or it's a warranty issue as opposed to maybe an actual legal defect, stuff like that. And there are conversations that are going on behind the scenes to see if there are ways that that the whole thing can be resolved without anybody having to trigger insurance. And so when that stuff is happening, yeah, I again might potentially consider making the strategic decision to hold off on making the tender, depending. So
Yeah.
again, sorry,
I mean, it's a
Rocio.
beautiful thing when you could get the contract, the GC and the sub to work together. And then you
Yeah,
have maybe the client who's a little upset, or even better when all three parties could work. But it is hard, when this guy's doing his own thing and all three parties, and you don't know what to do. Um, and I agree with you in that sense that if you have someone like us that could strategize, and you're absolutely right about the loss runs, that really has a big effect on your renewal, especially if
yeah,
you're 3 months before.
right.
So you definitely want to weigh that in, know what your risks are, assess it. But that's the same thing. That's why, my clients have the liberty. If something happens, call me. Let's strategize. If you have something happen right away, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get a bill for this. We need to, document, always document, collect the other parties, what are they testifying against, what are damages, what needs to be done, are we at fault? There's a big thing, like, if we are we at fault, because if we are, okay,
Right.
we need to take responsibility on this. We just can't,
Yeah,
hide our head. But if there's other
right.
parties involved and we're trying to work this out, then let's all get to a plan and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we're coming up on the tail end, and I want to make sure that we have time. I'm really proud. I found a website that generates like a wheel, and I was able to put the names of everybody who gave us questions in advance on the wheel. And so it's like
Yay.
a random generator. So
Okay.
I'm gonna do that like
Okay, you're gonna do that, and I'm assuming that people are gonna see on the screen what they're gonna win or who's gonna win. So that's exciting news. What are we raffling?
$15 gift card,
Yay.
$15 gift card. So here's what we're going to do since my internet hates me today. I'm going to do that now because the last
Okay.
question that I have is all you anyway. I don't have
Okay.
any input on this question. So that way, if I get kicked off again, you can just run with it and we'll be done with this nightmare. Okay.
Okay,
So
let's do the raffle or the
yeah, so I'm going
spin.
to let everybody see the raffle so you know I'm not cheating. So I've got it on my phone. Okay. So the people who submitted questions in advance were Heath, Joshua, Javi, Amanda, and Goose. Those are the people who submitted questions in advance. Your names, there you go. Your names are all submitted, and you each have a color on the wheel. So let's spin it and see who wins. Here we go.
Oh my
What we
God.
got?
It was
Uh-oh.
green. It was yellow and it turned green.
Goose.
Goose.
Goose is the winner. Yay,
Yay,
Goose.
goose.
We have to be careful about calling it a raffle. I think we can't do those in California. I think those are illegal.
Yeah,
It's not a
I know.
raffle.
I kind of stepped on my tongue there. I was like,
I know. I'm
oh.
like, no, we can't call it a raffle. I can't turn off the lawyer brain. Not a raffle. This was not at all a raffle. This was an appreciation gift. This was a thank you for participating gift. Okay, so Goose, I'll send you a DM if you're even on here. I hate that about StreamYard. I can't see who's here, but unless if they're not commenting. So if Goose is here, I'll DM you. If you're not here, you're gonna get a DM. Okay, so I'm gonna throw up the last question because it's all for you. So if I get kicked off, then we'll just be done when it's done.
Okay.
Oh, wait, we did get another comment. Oh, Amanda says, yay, Goose. Okay, so, all right, here is our final question. What's your process for determining the appropriate amount of insurance?
It's based on your scope of work, your gross sales, and your contracts. So you never want to be underinsured, no matter what. I mean, there's no reason. I mean, it's pretty standard across all industries. It's a million, but you have to look at how much assets you have. Are you a corporation? Are you a sole proprietor? Do you have directors and officers? You have to look at your corporation as a whole. And I always say, I'm in the insurance industry, and people in the insurance industry are overinsured, and that is true. I'm insured in every possible way, just because I've seen some nasty things happen, and honestly, I have some random things happen to me too. So I'm always advocating just to have the insurance. Now, Can you roll the dice and never have an EPL claim? Oh, yeah, of course. But do you want to get stuck one day with a class action and not have EPL? No, you don't, because you're going to be killing me. You're going to be coming, knocking at my door saying, Rocio, why didn't you sign me up for this EPL policy when you know that California is employee friendly and that one day I was going to get screwed? Now you're mad at me because you didn't purchase that, or, you somehow come back. But I always have, very straight up, like, here are the risks. Here's what your scope of work is. This is what I recommend. You can take it or leave it. And, I always say, if you don't have an umbrella, at least carry $1 million umbrella. You just don't know if commercial auto nowadays, uh, you cannot go wrong with having that 1 million excess over your workers' comp, general liability, and auto.
I love it. That's a great answer, and one I'm ill-equipped to make. So that's why I was like, this was all you. I don't have anything to do with that. So that's awesome. Okay, so before I get thrown out again, let me thank you from the bottom of my heart for your time today and your expertise. You are wonderful. I love every opportunity that I get to talk shit about insurance carriers with you because I love good brokers. I just hate carriers. So you're wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing your time and your knowledge with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Megan. I'm so happy to be on your show, and I look forward to working with you and bringing you on my team so you can help out my clients when we get that claim
Yes.
denied, and moving forward on helping us out strategize how to properly tackle these situations.
Yes, absolutely. I'm looking forward to working with you too. And in fact, I'm going to send you a DM after this because I may have a client for you. So,
Okay, sounds good.
all right, I'm going to end it now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.